democracy in the era of Facebook. We've been talking in part one of our discussion about hate speech and fake news. Just how much are they influencing elections? We've just seen one in the United States. We have one coming up here in France soon, as well as another next year in Germany. With us to talk about it, data strategist Rena Stamboliska. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to blogger Jean-Pierre Larochelle, director of the Political Forum, Freddie Winkler, the founder of marketing firm The Crave, and joining us from Austin, Texas, Vincent Harris, who was digital director for the campaign of Rand Paul and then worked for Team Trump. He's the founder and CEO at Harris Media. Welcome back to all of you. Freddie Winkler, on this issue then of you know, the wheat and the chaff, let me just read to you one reaction on the hashtag F24debate. If Facebook and Google can affect our democracy badly, it's a problem with our democracy, not with Facebook or Google.
It is a problem. If they can affect our democracy, it's a problem with the democracy, you know, a point, you know. And I think to what Vincent was saying, you know, everything is, I want free, it's about freedom of speech. And yes, you know, we are free. And even though we're here in France, I can't go out of here and run around Paris naked. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm sure I'll get lots of tweets. I'll be on Facebook. I'm sure there'll be tons of that. You know, there's always people who do that in football matches, but I'm not allowed to do that. So that's the first thing is with freedom must come obligations. That's the first thing. The second thing is there is a huge difference between having an opinion that you can say, you know, you can read a left-wing newspaper, a right-wing newspaper, a center, whatever you want. They will have opinions. But there's a difference between an opinion and something that's blatantly false and fake. And the moment I read something on Facebook, the moment I see on Google, it is true. Because Facebook is my friends don't normally lie. If they share content on there, it's true. The same way that it's true if it's in the New York Times. Now, it might be a different opinion, but it's true. Now, if it's not true, here's the problem. And that's what needs to be controlled somehow. Because otherwise, what just happens is you get tons of these fake things, and people, however bright they are, that's not the issue of saying voters are not bright. It's saying, if I see it on these sites, I believe that they are true.
All right, yeah, there's different shades of fake as well. We were researching for today's show. We came across a very far right-wing website here in France that earlier in the day ran as its top story, migrants set fire to their own shelter in Dusseldorf because they're angry over Nutella shortage. Now, this was a story on Today. The fire in question did happen. It happened last June. Whether or not it was over Nutella, we don't know. We haven't been able to fact check that appropriately. So how do you decide what's fake news?
Well, there's two things in there. The first thing is what people read is the headline. People on Facebook and the rest read very little of the rest, which is why, in fact, when you analyze the content of Clinton's versus Trump's was much more pictures and headlines, whereas you had much more in-depth articles about Clinton's, less read, you know, and that's proven by the numbers in Facebook. So how do you decide? You have to check. You know, and that's one of the issues is with the amount of things that goes out, how do you really check? To be honest, I don't know. You know, I don't have the answer. Otherwise, I'd be a very rich guy, I guess, or a very hated guy by many people in the Silicon Valley. But it is a real issue that somehow we need to deal with. And what we also need to deal with is how do politicians not start to carry these fake news when they're on TV? Because you are checked, but if I come on TV and I have false allegations to make, I can do that. And again, the moment they're out, they're out. And they're going to be tweeted, and they're going to go on Facebook, and they're going to go everywhere. And they could be blatantly fake. And that's how I think what we're seeing now is a lot more politicians learning how to use that, you know, just to send messages out. Because what happens after that, even if it's not true, is you're defending, and defense never works.
Jean-Pierre Larochelle?
Again, I think the biggest threat to democracy is really this attempt to try to restrict free speech. So now, clearly, free speech, as you pointed out earlier, is not an absolute right, and there are very clearly defined limits. But it's very important for our democracy to define those limits as narrowly as possible. So we do have limits. You mentioned public safety with shouting fire in a theater. We have limits regarding slander and libel, for instance. So there are limits. But
and in this country, there are specific laws regarding racism and anti-Semitism.
That's true, and there is in some Western democracies restrictions on hate speech. which is relatively new. And again, I think it's very important in our democracies. I like the U.S. approach, which is to define those restrictions as narrowly as possible. You don't want to get the state into policing ideas and saying this is a good thought, this is a bad thought. So you might find the thought reprehensible, but you should be defending the right of the person to say that. And a great example of that was back in Skokie, Illinois, which is a heavily Jewish community. It was a Supreme Court case when the Nazis wanted to march through that town in protest. And the Supreme Court said they have absolutely the right to march there through their protest. And once they gave them that right, that protest completely fizzled. They had more publicity when it was quote unquote banned.
All right. Here's one for you, Raina. We had, this was when The Atlantic, it published a video of Trump supporters from the alt-right movement last weekend hailing his victory with Nazi salutes. He's denounced it, by the way. Does it illustrate how the internet is a force for good? Here we are, uncovering objectionable behavior. Or will these images just simply go viral and provide yet more oxygen for what should remain a fringe element?
Both of those. I mean, just to connect with what you guys said, 44% of American voters use Facebook to get news. Fact one. Fact two, Facebook recently censored the very famous image of the from the Vietnam War, where you have this naked girl trying to run away from napalm and so on. Where I'm getting here is to the fact that Facebook named the news feed for a reason. It's news feed. It's not just a social network. And I completely agree with your stance that we basically outsourced our, friendly discussions over beer in the bar to Facebook, right? And second thing is, we know there is research led by Facebook research team showing that people are actually influenced by the content they're served on Facebook, right? And then you get to the question you asked. I could today, and many people in France are doing that, putting up a website that looks very much alike an official media. I can curate information, put up very nicely editorialized titles to suit my own ideas, and send that on Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. It won't necessarily be a fake news. It may be this video where people are doing the Nazi salute. It will still go viral. And then getting people back to tell them, look, it's not what I meant. It wasn't meant to be news. It was meant to be denunciation or anything. Good luck.
There's an element of two-facedness about this freedom as well. We hear freedom, 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 great. I can't show nipple on Instagram, but I can show a Nazi salute. Who decided that a nipple is uglier or less right than a Nazi salute? I don't know. Someone did. So freedom there
is in the realm
exist.
of ideas, and one is in a question of whether it's obscenity or not. So I mean,
Nazi salute to me is absolute insanity.
No, but it's an obscenity on the moral level. It's in the realm of
visual.
the realm of idea. But one's a realm of ideals, and one pornography has always been treated
A nipple
differently.
is not pornography.
Well, whether
it's
it is or not
ideals.
is another issue. I'm just saying it's always been treated differently than political ideals. And up until now, we've established in Western democracies that we don't rate people's political ideals. We may agree with them or disagree with them, but we don't ban them because we disagree with them. And that's what you're talking about. It's very, very dangerous. That's what leads to tyranny.
Yes.
If I may, just for a second.
Vincent Harris, let me ask you, the famed painting of Marianne leading the people with her breasts a bare, do you think that should be banned on Facebook and Twitter?
No, I am for more freedom of speech. I'm for people being able to say and do whatever that they want online. And two other main points to bring up. One is you've brought up a lot of right-wing examples online of disgusting speech. There's a lot of left-wing examples online too of disgusting speech and disgusting videos and people saying that they want to kill Donald Trump and he's, and saying awful things. So that is one point. And the second point is I think that we get into trouble when we also write off entire sources. You had mentioned earlier some right-wing source. Well, as they say about a broken clock, it's right 2 times a day still. And one of our most famous scandals in the United States was the National Enquirer, that usually writes about aliens coming and people being, you know, hosts for aliens and all these weird stories. And you'd normally pick it up when you were checking out at the grocery store to just laugh. They actually were the ones who broke the story about John Edwards' extramarital affair with Riel Hunter, and they were correct. So people normally write them off, and if Facebook had banned them as fake news, well, that would be scary because they actually did have real news.
But
so
Vincent,
again,
you were complaining earlier about how the algorithm was biased against conservatives at Facebook. Should that algorithm be public?
Yes, more transparency, more openness, absolutely. Facebook wants money from conservatives who are advertising on there. Why don't they tell us how their algorithm works? Why don't they let us know exactly then if they want our money and they want to continue asking conservatives and now President Trump to be spending money on there? I think absolutely it should be public.
Reina Stamboliska?
Yeah, I completely agree with the last point Vincent was making. All those choices made that we were denouncing earlier, they were not made by humans. They were made by algorithms, right? Because Facebook recently let off their selection stuff, so to speak. So what happens is that we are again in a completely privately owned space where we cannot see the data, we cannot assess or learn or study or anything. The algorithms that do those choices, we just can't do anything. So if Mr. Zuckerberg comes up and says, look, guys, we're the good guys, don't blame it on us, we are supposed to take it on face value.
Reaction on the hashtag F24debate. If social networks amplify fake news, I do see that they have a responsibility as influencers. Freddie Winkler, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, all these are US companies. What right do we have as Europeans to demand that they show responsibility or that they go public with algorithms?
Well, because they affect our people, they affect our democracy, they affect what happens here. So we have all the rights in the world. You know, a lot of these networks have been banned from China, for example. I'm not saying we should ban them here, that's crazy.
Right.
But, you know, one of the things I'd like to react was what you talked about, you know, the nipple versus the salute. And if you ban free speech, that leading to tyranny, I think that's crazy. You know, tyranny becomes when crazy ideas are taken to the mass and become exciting. That's, you know, that's how we saw the rise of tyranny in the world, not because we showed
free
other
speech
things.
is how they did it. They
Not in Germany.
Sure, Nazi Germany,
Absolutely
absolutely. The state used propaganda to push its
After-
ideas.
after
and
he was elected.
Yeah, after they came to power.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
but afterwards,
yeah.
but not before.
Freddie
So
Winkler's talking
tyranny
about before.
comes from crazy ideas becoming there. So what I'm saying is not you should ban everything. What I'm saying is there is a huge problem that needs to be dealt with about how do you stop fake news from being spread. We can't accept, because what happens here is they are influencers. Actually, they're much bigger influencer, if you think about it, than any of the classical media. All the classical media were against Trump. I'm not saying that, you know, and I think Vincent was right saying there's, you know, smear tactics were everywhere, but all the classical media were against Trump. Bizarrely, he got elected. So that means to me that what we see is that the social media has much more influence for a very simple reason, which is I trust better what my friends say than what a journalist that I see as the elite somewhere in Washington or New York or wherever tells me. And that's key. That means they have a real responsibility as influencers because they carry friend stories. Now, how we deal with it is a huge problem. You know, it's not about banning free speech. It is about getting to all of these sources of fake news and stopping them. And that's true not just for elections. It's true for terrorism. You know, and it's one of the things that we have to get these companies to deal with, because we see terrorists on our soil here being recruited to go to Syria through the web. Do we just stand and let it happen? We can't.
At the APEC summit in Peru that concluded on Monday, Facebook CEO argued the internet can help to stamp out poverty, reduce the inequality that's been boosting populist. Mark Zuckerberg there speaking in Lima, Peru.
Research shows that for every 10 people who get online, about one person gets lifted out of poverty and almost 1 new job gets created. So if we can connect the 4 billion people who are unconnected, we can lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty.
All right, so the internet there is a vector of openness, of social progress. However, the New York Times, quoting 3 current and former Facebook employees, and writing the social network has quietly developed software to suppress posts from appearing in people's news feeds in specific geographical areas. The idea, well, to regain entry to a Chinese market that kicked Facebook out in 2009. They say the project illustrates the extent to which Facebook may be willing to compromise one of its core mission statements to make the world more open and connected, to gain access to a market of 1.4 billion Chinese people. At the end of the day, it's all about making money, Jean-Pierre Larochelle.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. And I think an important point, we talked about whether they should be forced to make their algorithm public. I think it's very important that we don't do that. That would be depriving them of a very important proprietary advantage that they have in their algorithm. On the other hand, I do agree that there is a problem with the echo chamber. So it's a separate issue, and that's something that needs to be evaluated. And then the other issue that...
But how do you reassure Vincent, for instance, if you don't go public with that algorithm?
But reassure him about what?
About whether or not Facebook is biased.
Oh, well, just the same way we determine anybody's bias. You have to look at the, the proof is in the pudding. You look at their actions and you determine whether they're biased or not. But I think the algorithm is a proprietary advantage, and they shouldn't be deprived of that. That's worth a lot of money. That's their whole business. So you'd basically be taking their business away. But I do agree that there is an issue with the echo chamber, which is a very serious issue. And then the other issue I sort of agree with is he mentioned that people sort of accept what is true on Facebook. But the problem there isn't to force Facebook to police information to see if it's true or not. It's to educate people to be more critical and to understand that not everything you read is true. And people sort of understand that now with biased media, and I think they need to understand it with Facebook if they don't already understand that.
Is it going to be a learning curve, picking up on what Jean-Pierre just said, Reina, that people, all right, this time around it happened this way, but people are going to learn a bit like, when they read the tabloids in Britain. Most of the time, people do a little smirk when they read some of the stories.
Yeah, I don't see how this could happen. I mean, taking just on this algorithm issue, the digital economy has immensely evolved, and we're today in an economy of abundance. So having your hold on a piece of technology does not necessarily give you this advantage in the business world, right? So, arguing that, oh, poor Facebook, they will be, bankrupted if they opened their algorithm.
But why should they have to give it up? That's their business.
Yeah, they built it.
I agree with that. Their business, however, their money mostly comes from commercials. I mean, look at the money they did. I don't remember the figures anymore, but they did thousands of millions from commercials coming throughout the whole campaign just because of that. No. And speaking of money, we had TV. I'll get back to the learning curve later, but we had TVs, TV channels in the US talking about Trump constantly, continuously. I don't remember for like Rodney Benson, a professor of sociology, for instance, mentioned that the amount of time people have spent on TV talking about Trump amounts to $5 billion of commercials that the campaign should have spent.
It was mostly negative.
Yeah, but to be honest,
it doesn't matter.
That's because he was better at it.
It's exposure. It's exposure.
He was better. He was a better
Let me ask just one final question, because we're almost out of time. Vincent Harris, Donald Trump, a guy who was well known publicly, his Twitter followers, that was well chronicled. Is it a one-off? Or can there be others, or is he really in a league by himself when it comes to the way he used free publicity?
So I think that the transparency and direct nature of what Mr. Trump and, has been doing with the American electorate is fantastic. And I think that it's great that he's continued to share with us directly on Twitter and on Facebook.
But can other politicians get away with it?
That's TBD. I think Marianne Le Pen could. So I look forward to watching your all's race from Texas here with eagerness.
All right, we'll leave it there. Vincent Harris, food for thought from Austin, Texas. Many thanks for joining us. I want to thank Freddie Winkler, Reina Stamoulis. I also want to thank Jean-Pierre Larochelle. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. All right, and we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Emma, we were talking about that report in the New York Times quoting current and former Facebook employees regarding the development of ways to suppress free speech in China.
Yes, and this is causing quite a stir online and in all the online media too, because Mark Zuckerberg was very heavily criticised for not really showing that much concern about the spread of fake news on Facebook, downplaying the amount of influence that it would have had, and there was a real failure to address that issue. But now, of course, he's talking... This report, at least, is talking about censoring real news, not fake news. And it is all about China, a country that he has been trying to get closer to. As you can see here, he has met with the Chinese president, and it is clearly a market he is looking to break into. He is a businessman after all. And these former Facebook employees in particular have spilled the beans on this new software that's being developed. Quite a few employees apparently have quit over it, which is interesting to note. But what it will do is suppress posts from appearing in people's timelines, depending on where they are geographically speaking. Now, where this differs from what Facebook already does is that it will stop posts appearing at all. At the moment, Facebook will grant government requests to take things down or stop them appearing. But those are things that have already appeared. It's worked here in France, interestingly, under laws banning the denial of the Holocaust or condoning terrorism, and in the wake of last year's attacks in November 2015, they worked to make sure that a particular image wasn't allowed because it contravened laws in France here involving maintaining the dignity of victims of crime and of terror. So this is a very, very interesting story with many angles that people are looking at. This quote in particular really talks about the fact that these Facebook employees only spoke on condition of anonymity because the tool is confidential. So at the moment, we don't have confirmation that it exists, but certainly there seem to be enough people talking about it.
All right, so not yet enacted,
but
being considered.
Exactly, and Facebook has 1.79 billion active users a month, but not one of them comes from China, and that makes you understand the reason why this is so important for Mark Zuckerberg, because that China's market is basically the world's largest online market that he at the moment can't tap into. Facebook was banned after riots in 2009 in which 140 people were killed, and China wanted to stem the flow of information about those riots, and that's where this ban in China came in.
Freddie Winkler, Google took the high road on this one and moved its operations to Hong Kong and got out. Do you think Facebook is going to backtrack a bit after this story?
I don't think so. As you said, it's huge potentially for them. So it's making concessions to be able to enter a market which is, you just cannot not exist in China. And they've left the way to WeChat and other people. So they have to get in there. And I think what he's doing is trying to deal with the reality of what's happening there.
And I think perhaps some of the controversy is about the fact that the timing of this, in the wake of a US election that most people feel was at least to some extent influenced by what people were seeing and sharing on social media. Facebook denied that there was anything they could do. They denied really that it was their fault, that they were that influential. And if we look at the kind of responses that we're seeing on Twitter today, this Twitter user says, Facebook's reaction last month, look, fake news is a hard problem, meaning it's a tough problem to tackle. This revelation, we've developed a tool to block the real news, and that's where this controversy comes in. Clara Jeffrey, who's the editor-in-chief of Mother Jones, says this should outrage us, and a lot of people really are outraged about it. Harlan Hill among them. This is disgusting. Mark Zuckerberg is selling out freedom for profit, and many people are asking, would he do the same if it were Turkey or if it were Russia or another country making the same demands?
Just finally, it's ironic because the New York Times, described by Donald Trump as the failing New York Times, and yet they've been at the heart of it, well, with that interview of Donald Trump.
Absolutely. They are at the heart of every scoop. And talking of scoops, the New York Daily News could not ignore the fact that the New York Times had outscooped them by getting this interview with Donald Trump, but they have painted him as Mr. Softy because of all the U-turns that he did in that interview, going soft on his stance on climate change, torture, and of course whether or not he would prosecute Hillary Clinton. So that is one reaction to the New York Times. Plenty more out there online.
All right, many thanks for that, Emma James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.